Warm welcome to this special episode of ETGovernment's Public Sector Leadership Series. My name is Anoop Verma. Today, our guest for this special episode is Anurag Awasthi. He is a former colonel in the Indian Army. Currently, he is working as Vice President of India Electronics Semiconductor Association, IESA. IESA is an electronics industry association engaged in spearheading the growth of semiconductor and electronics manufacturing industry by fostering local and global collaborations and partnerships. It also supports startups, MSMEs, and academic research in the sector. Anurag Awasthi frequently interacts with key officers and leaders in the Ministry of Electronics and IT and other relevant ministries, and also with investors and industrialists in the electronics sector to develop new policies, ideas, strategies for growing the semiconductor and electronics manufacturing industry in India. Welcome, Mr. Awasthi.
Thank you, Anoopji. Thank you very much for having me on the show.
In the field of software, India has done quite well in the last 40 years. But in the hardware, we seem to have missed the bus. Why did India fail to make a mark in the hardware space? What is more to blame for this failure? Government policy or the private sector priorities?
Now, this is a question that a lot of people ask whether you missed the bus, you've not missed the bus. But I think it has been more circumstantial. It has got nothing to do with the industry or the government or the policies. No, it hasn't been. See, I will chronicle this to you from the late 60s or early 60s when the first interest in the transistors, the precursor to the ICs came into being. And that is the time a lot of public sector units, including the Bharat Electronics Limited, got into it. Now you have to look at the country's landscape that time. There were three wars in quick succession. There was a Sino-Indian War in '62, followed up by the Indo-Pak War in 1965, and then of course the mother of all wars in 1971, which essentially broke a country into two. Now in this kind of a circumstance, a lot of things take a little backseat. Lo and behold, a lot of people also have a lot of regard and a lot of prowess of the TSMC is never understated. But lo and behold, we have to understand that the SEL or the Semiconductor Laboratory was established in 1983. So the astute policy push from the government was always there. TSMC came into being in 1987. And then, of course, there was a small, not small, a very large fire in 1989 in the semiconductor laboratory, in which a lot of things were gutted. And then, you chronicle from 1989 to 1991, and that is when you opened the economy. So when you could get something for $2 outside, while you could make the same thing in a nascent system for $25 or $30, it did not make a business case. So it is more circumstantial. And then the pandemic happened. And then the supply chains got a little strained and, a lot of things went awry, so to say. And that is the time the world woke up to the entire understanding of this quagmire of semiconductors, which power, safety razors to space shuttles. Keeping up in the trend, you see, in December 2021, the government of India took out the India semiconductor policy. Sometime in October 2022, it modified it to suit the entire requirement. And just seeing in the last 2 years, you have 5 announcements of big, players into the market, which include 1 fab and 4 OSATs. There are more in the offing. So I think we did not miss the bus. It was more circumstantial. And, as I always say, and I write in my writings, till a lion learns to write, every story will glorify the hunter. So the lion has learned to write. So it's just a question of time. And another very important aspect, you spoke about software, Anoopji. The Indian landscape, when you look at the manufacturing sector, when you look at the services sector, and when you look at the agriculture, the bulk goes into the service sector because it is a low-hanging fruit. So for the last around 3-4 decades, a lot of people have gone into the IT sector or in the software sector because there was a return on investment. There were Googles and Microsofts here, where a young boy or a girl graduating out of a particular subset could get a great, job with great remuneration. So somewhere down the line, this is now changing. with a lot of impactful schemes by the government, including change of syllabus, a lot of other things which we can talk about a little later. So I would not say any major issues on missing the bus or policy paralysis or the government not playing up or the industry not taking root of it. It was more circumstantial, as as I've chronicled to you. I hope that answers your question.
You made one very interesting point that why buy something at $25 in India when it is available in the international market at $2? But then how did China do this? Because they started manufacturing from the very beginning, and they were manufacturing not just for their own country but also for the globe. So did they not consider this point that if you manufacture over here, it might not be as competitive in price terms as it is in the international market, or was the situation different back then?
No, I would say personally, to start with, India and China are two very different systems. They are apples and oranges. They are not the same. The system of governance, the system of parties, the system of understanding, the system of enforcing policies, and the system of doing things insofar as the business is concerned is very, very diverse. So while if you go back also in history, history gives you answers for a lot of things. As late as 1987, Deng Xiaoping said, and I quote, if Middle East has oil, China has rare earths, right? So they have a lot of endowment of a lot of things at hand, and then they suited what suited them at that juncture. So while you can say that they got into the volumes and they got into the economies of scale insofar as this is concerned, you cannot downplay the others because at that time the need was not felt, and now there is a need because now this need arises from various things: the AI, the defense and aerospace segment, the cybersecurity, various other things which have now suddenly come up in the last around 1 decade. So, as the Honorable Prime Minister says, it is India's decade, and I think the semiconductors are going to be the vanguard of all the charge now, as I see it.
And can it also be related to why I talked about government policy in my earlier question is because I think we focus on the 5-year plan model of the Soviet Union, whereas China, after the period of Deng Xiaoping, they took a very long-term view. Even before that, I mean, in the 1920s, they probably developed a 100-year plan to, go ahead of the USA. There is a book also, The 100-Year
Yes,
Marathon. It's a very
that's
popular
correct.
book.
That
So
is
he
correct.
didn't develop a long-term vision, which Modi ji has now changed. He has developed a 25-year ahead vision of Viksit Bharat in 2047. So is that a problem of a long-term vision that led to this adverse development in networks?
No, actually, I would answer this question as yes and no. While it's absolute full marks to the present government who have understood this and the kind of push they are giving and the kind of policies they have unleashed in the last around 2.5 years after so much of ideation, so much of stakeholder interactions. They're the best in class all over the world. Now, while this is a reality, the understanding of these planning or 5-year plans versus a 100-year plan or all of that, it is not very coherent in terms of developing things. Firstly, technology is all pervasive. You can't say much about technology. I'll bring to your mind that famous picture that we see of 1985 or 1984, 1985, when you saw there were machines coming up in a bullock cart in Texas Instruments facility in Bangalore. You never knew that you will be home to more than 20% designers in the world today. I mean, you never thought about it. The same is the story with Maruti. I come from that generation. There were two cars, Ambassador and Fiat, and in came Maruti Suzuki in the early 80s. And now you may be making, Audis and Mercedes here in India, but Maruti still has more than 40% market share. When you look at the technology, it is not, it is all pervasive. You can't say how things will pan out. There are no waypoints. That is one. The second thing is when you're looking at these planning parameters. Planning parameters also have to be dovetailed with a lot of public spending transparency, they have to be dovetailed with a lot of other issues which are in hand. Now, there is one entity which devalues its currency most of the times. There is another entity where you start something called the big fund 1.0, 2.0. There's a 3.0 tranche which is coming. There have been a lot of pitfalls there. So in the entire system, nothing is all perfect. So whether it is a 5-year plan which you followed in some manner or the other, or somebody is followed, somebody's 100-year plan or 40-year plan, that I think personally it is immaterial. The whole acme of skill lies in execution on ground. So as long as you can execute things on ground, I think a lot of things can be taken care of. And in terms of execution, I think we will be more transparent, we will be more cogent, we will be more progressive, and we are more responsive to the world market as time comes. And we have the brains. So I don't think there's any, mismatch in terms of planning insofar as India and China is concerned. But this is my personal view.
Yeah, that's fine. I think that's a good point that you have made. You also talked about this in your answers. In the last 5 years, the central government has taken a number of measures to attract investments in the electronics space. PLI scheme is doing quite well in making the investment attractive to the industries. Some big investments have happened, like from Micron, TSMC, Tata's, and other groups. So, what kind of growth can the electronics sector expect in the next 5 years, which is Modi 3.0 government?
Phenomenal
Yes.
is all I can tell you. See, when you're looking at the Indian semiconductor market today, it is likely to be touching $100 billion by 2030. And it is going to be a very integral part of the Indian $1 trillion, technological economy, which the government is very clear about. When you look at the consumer electronics, you are looking at a benchmarking of around $65 billion by 2030, as per our reports. It may be crystal gazing, but I think the proof will lie in its pudding, the way it's going to be going. Now, having said that, when you look at this entire policy matrix, which you just alluded to, look at how wonderfully it has been crafted. So you have a PLI which looks at the fabrication facilities, the OSATs and display. You have the DLI or the design linked incentive, which looks at the design and the fabless segment. You have the chips to startup, where you are looking at enabling a lot of startups in hardware which have not been very up and about in the past, where their maximum consumption or usage of money is into EDA tools. And there are only, you and I are aware, there are only 2 to 3 EDA tools in the world who have a hegemony over EDA tools. So the government has gone the extra mile to give them the EDA tools insofar as the DLI also, as well as the C2S is concerned. Then you are looking at in chips. Then you are looking at the components segment, in which the government is now very astutely looking into infusing a lot of effort and money. Now, when you look at this entire system, all bases are covered. You're looking after the fab, you're looking after the OSATs, you're looking after the design, you're looking after the startups, you're looking after components. I'm actually amazed that this kind of thought has gone into it. And in the next around 5 to 6 years, I think we should be a semiconductor, if not a superpower, at least a regional power, insofar as Southeast Asia is concerned. And all this push actually has translated on ground. You have a policy which a central government takes out, and then there are states. As I use this word, I call it competitive federalism. It's a great word which was used by and actually annotated by China and various other countries in the world. Now there are states who come with as incentives on top of stacking up on top of the national policy. Say that I will give you 20%, I will give you 25% in terms of land, infrastructure, in terms of water, in terms of land duty rates. I mean the system is so big. And so you will find, while this competitive federalism takes shape, you will find the best coming into the the arena where the entire diligence of the government lies today. So I have no doubt in my mind, in another 4 or 5 years, we should be up there insofar as this sector is concerned.
In the recent Semicon event that happened in Greater Noida, Prime Minister said that in the next 6 years, the electronics manufacturing in the country could be worth $500 billion. That's the figure that he has given it. So to reach that mark, what does the country need to do? What kind of investment do we need to attract?
Okay, now electronics and semiconductors has essentially three parts of the trident, as I always say. The first part is investment, obviously, because it is a high investment endeavor, and it's one of the most complex endeavor known to man. So it's not as simple as it looks to be. So obviously, you would require more investment. The second is technology. Whether you want to do only silicon, you want to do various other subsets of silicon carbide, you want to do gallium nitride, you want to do gallium arsenide, you want to do something else, whichever way it is. Or you want to focus on only ATMP oblique OSATs, or you want to only focus on the design and fabless segment. Now, each one of them has its own subsets. The third part of the trident is the supply chain. Now, while we speak about semiconductors, there are more than 150 gases and chemicals which form part of the supply chain. They require purity, semiconductor purity. They require the qualification dynamics. They require cartage. They require shelf life. They require usage. They require their you know uh, disposal. So there's so many subsets which are involved in that. So while we are looking at these three things, investment, you're looking at technology, and you're looking at supply chain, all these three issues are being addressed by the government totally, in totality. So while they are being addressed, I think it is just a matter of time that a lot of things will form part of this whole system. Now this is something as we see in the world also. It is more of a domino effect. So you find one huge entity who gets into this fray and does the required what is needs to be done. It attracts more people. It attracts more quality. It attracts more understanding of this entire field. Now, you call it revenge of geography or you call it anything else in Asia. I mean, you are sitting on most of the big supply lines of the world. You are structured geographically in such a way that nobody can ignore you. And then you have the biggest thing, which you have the demographic dividend, which the Honorable Prime Minister also, in passing, also has mentioned some of the times. I mean, you imagine a country where you have a median age of 27 and a half or 28 years as compared to China, or you look at Japan or wherever. And then with this age comes aspirations. When I was and you were 27, 28, I think we had a lot of aspirations as compared to what we have now. So with those aspirations come demand. So demand drive the market. So what the Honorable Prime Minister has said is a very doable figure. In the next around 5 to 6 years, this will be a harbinger for the Indian $1 trillion technological economy. That is certain. And the trajectory that the country is following now is absolutely right in terms of whether it is big ticket announcements, whether it is workforce development, whether it is change of syllabus, whether it is giving a lot of impetus onto hardware, whether it is into policy, whether it is into various MOUs which are being signed as we see. You've seen a MOU with Japan, you've seen an MOU with EU. Just now, I think we've last month we've had a MOU with Singapore, and there are more in the offing. So investment taken care of, technology taken care of by a lot of MOUs, and then of course you have the supply chain which the government is working on. So I'm that eternal optimist. So I don't think there should be any problem on the figure that has been announced.
I think optimism is a good thing. And you also talked about the demographic dividend that India has, which is a right. I think most of the population is young. However, what kind of education and what kind of skill development does this demographic dividend have? So, do we have enough trained workforce who can actually work in these kind of advanced technologies? So, what
Uh,
percentage of our demographic dividend is capable of working in these high-tech technology areas?
that's a great question. This actually it's not an Indian problem actually, Anup. This is a global issue. Talent deficit is a global issue. I mean, you start from anywhere, including Taiwan. They have a problem to get attract that best talent today. Now, let me also, qualify this statement by saying that you have 1.5 million engineers coming every year. In the last around 1.5 to quarter to 2 years, you would have seen a lot of syllabus being changed. The VLSI has got infused inside the syllabus by AICTE and various other regulatory agencies. The private universities have got some great labs, VLSI labs coming in. There are a lot of veterans, industry veterans now who would be, rising up to the occasion and getting into the domain of professor of practice, all of that. But having said that, while the estimate has been given insofar as the study which is concerned, which was finished last year by the entire industry and the ministry, we are looking at around 85,000 manpower. Now, having said that, we also need to also understand that a fabrication facility does not require that much of a manpower. The ATMP requires more manpower as compared to a fabrication facility because that is automated at the end of the day because it's in a different realm of technology. The design manpower or the fabless manpower is increasing by the day. Now, while all this is good, while all this is good, we need to actually look at a 4-tier model. While I speak with a lot of you know foreign entities here who come and meet, and we have a discussion either in IESA or on the sidelines of a summit or something like that. There's a lot of interest in the lowest level of the pyramid, which is the technicians and the operators and all of that. So, how we need to gear our ITIs or our diploma courses at the lowest level with by the skill development, astute skill development, by various other means, as also energize the undergrad sector, which has already been done by tweaking the syllabus, the postgrad sector, which also is required, but in a smaller proportion. And of course, then you have that postdoctoral level, which either way is far and few, but then that you can make do either way. So we need to target all these 4 segments of education in the next 4 to 5 years in case we really need to be the talent superpower and export talent to the world. Now, when you see a lot of countries looking at this talent deficit, uh, more or less in the next around 1 or 2 years, what I find is that they will tune into India. A, because there's a lot of STEM, primacy in India. No points for guessing. The most number of women in STEM are in India as compared to a lot of other countries. And the third most important thing is we are an English-speaking nation as compared to the others in the region or wherever. I will not name countries, but as compared to them, I think we have that biggest trump that we speak English. So there is no major issue insofar as the language barrier is concerned. While this is an important aspect, I would also look at various educational institutions looking at foreign language courses which could be infused as part of the changed curriculum, and of course in tune with the new path-breaking national education policy, which will take a little while, but it's going to be setting in. I think is one of the best things which has happened with this country after a long time. So while you put in language training, you are an English speaking nation, you have the STEM wherewithal, you have the numbers. I think it's just a question of time how you tweak the whole thing and put it in your favor and become the talent powerhouse to the world.
One important point I think that hit me that you made is that the electronics industry does not require that kind of manpower, a very large manpower. Now, in a country like India, where there is so much need for jobs, so then at some point of time, the as the electronic industry grows, if it reaches the figure of let's say 500 billion that the Prime Minister has talked about, then the industry will get accused of fostering jobless growth. So
No,
that leads to a political
I
problem then. That becomes a
Okay,
pretty.
what I mentioned is only the fabrication facility. There's a lot of manpower which is required in the OSAT and ATMP. There's a lot of manpower used in PC
Okay. So other
manufacturing.
aspects of the industry will require a
Yes,
lot of
yes,
power and jobs
of
will be
course.
created.
Yes, absolutely. Components. A lot of manpower is required there. What about the secondary manpower, which becomes a part of the system, whether it is logistics, whether it is testing, whether it is transportation, whether it is cartage, whether it is handling material handling at ports, so many things. So while there is a upstream, there is also a downstream. So while saying this, that when you're looking at highly specialized technical manpower, for a fab, you may require it lesser in number as compared to the others.
So that means there will be prospect for a lot of jobs to be created also,
Lots.
including all, if we include the entire ecosystem.
Yes, yes. Both
Uh,
upstream and downstream.
so earlier, Japan was one of the largest electronics producers at one point of time. So one of the reasons that is given for Japan's decline and China's rise is that Japan did not have the geopolitical muscle to force other countries to buy its electronics products. America has that muscle, China has that muscle. So they are dominating the market. So if India dreams of producing 500 billions of, let's say, electronics products or manufacturing or other accessory products, then we should have some kind of deals with other countries so that they allow us to export to them. Do we have that kind of capability internationally to access the other markets?
If you see, there are going to be a lot of free trade agreements which are going to be happening. Some have happened. While when you're looking at critical minerals, you have joined the Critical Mineral Partnership in the previous visit of the Honorable Prime Minister in the United States. You have a strategic minerals pact with the Australians. You have a MOU, standing MOU with Japan. You have a standing MOU with the EU. You have a standing MOU now with Singapore, which also requires a lot of your critical manpower at some stage in time. It's going to be a very reciprocal way of doing things insofar as training and workforce development is concerned. There are more in the offing. So while geopolitics is most important, because finally, technology and geopolitics are actually not cousins, they are real brothers at the end of the day. While that is very important, but you have, when you look at the entire a digital chessboard, as I call it, the number of fabs in China, I would not very vehemently look at, because fabs are elsewhere. China looks at a lot of packaging, and it looks at the OSAT infrastructure. Fabs are generally in Southeast Asia. You're looking at Korea, Japan, Taiwan, of course. TSMC is the biggest behemoth on that. There are some packaging industries in Malaysia. There's a lot of fabrication, emphasis in Singapore. There are fabs in Europe, in Germany, and there is the Netherlands actually has the entire market insofar as the advanced lithographic machines are concerned. And of course, then you have the equipment manufacturers, which are generally based in the United States. So while you say that geopolitics is a very important aspect in technology, why it is an important aspect in technology is that no one country can do this end to end. So you have to, unfortunately or fortunately, people say, and it's a very big joke in the semiconductor industry, that each chip which comes to you takes the circle of the earth three times before it reaches you, whichever way you call it. So while there is no, clear hegemony of a particular, nation state or a particular, entity over this domain, whether it is electronics or it is semiconductors, thereby the geopolitics takes center stage. So when you're looking at volumes again will come in insofar as the technological pacts are concerned, because you can't do anything alone, as I just mentioned to you. So while on that front also, I think we are doing well insofar as the country is concerned. So I think it's just a question of time. While Rome was not built in a day, but it's being built.
Yeah, I think you are right because Taiwan, South Korea, they don't have that kind of geopolitical cloud, but still they are doing very well in the electronics space. So
So
In the area of design, India is doing very well. The GCCs and the startups located in India are major player in the global design ecosystem. And there are some reports that about 2,000 new GCCs are going to be opened in India very soon. But the problem with the GCCs is that they don't allow the Indian companies, startups, or MSMEs to own the IP. The intellectual property rights remains with the multinationals, foreign companies. So, and without owning the intellectual property rights, you can't have the, I mean, real income. The real income goes to the players who own the intellectual property. That's how it's in the electronics space. So, what can the government do to ensure that the IP remains in India?
oh yes, it's a very, very pertinent question. Actually, the entire fulcrum of the entire value chain in this space is on IPR. So there's a lot of push by the government insofar as the design entity is concerned in India. You look at the DLI scheme; it already has 13 confirmed beneficiaries. They're more in line as they're coming, and there will be much more. So the government is very alive to this fact. The industry is very alive to this fact that at the end of the day, you have to look at IPRs. Now, in terms of GCCs, which you just mentioned, in fact, yesterday also only I think Karnataka has launched its first GCC policy, the draft policy on GCC. Now, while you are looking at major foreign entities setting up base in a particular place, but you are willy-nilly developing a very big ecosystem also. So while developing an ecosystem and the government push on the IPR at the same time, insofar as the design and fabless segment is concerned, I think at some day and in some time frame they will converge. And this issue is very clearly understood by the industry. Academia, it is understood very clearly by academia. It's understood obviously by the government. That is why they're putting in so much of effort and energy into the whole thing. So I don't think there should be an issue in that after a particular time and space, because this is a known area which requires more emphasis and more interest. So it's just work in progress. I think. I mean, it would be wrong for me to set a timeline and tell you, oh, by around 2028 or 2029 or whatever it may be. But it's work in progress. People have understood this in all three domains: industry, academia, as well as the government. So it's just a work in progress and very alive to it. People are very alive to this fact, right?
One of the areas where one of the reasons that we don't have so much IP is because our private sector and our academic institutions are not funding big research. If you look at the research that they are doing, their target is to create a product, transform that research into a product within 1 or 2 years and start making profit. They don't make do research for long-term projects, projects which can take like the Western countries. They started their research into quantum over 100 years ago, and it has still not been converted into a product. The first quantum computer will come in 5, 10 years.
Okay,
So we don't have the appetite for making that kind of investment. So how can we own the IP?
right. See, a correlated point of what you just mentioned is a lot of people say, and I quote that, R&D is a very cerebral function. That, you do a lot of research and development, and oh, you have the brains and you will be able to do it. To my mind, R&D is a function of money. It's as simple as that. So because it has to give you a lot of gaps and leeways to fail and start again. That is one. So by virtue of that money, you will have a culture of R&D, which now has been plugged in by the government, by the National Research Fund, which has come in, various other issues which have come in, skill development, Skill India has come in, various other things have come in. Now, while you may say that that the IPR will remain a little shrouded kind of a area for a little while, but I think the way the government is infusing money into R&D, like there is also a talk of the semiconductor laboratory Mohali coming into and being rechristened as the Bharat Semiconductor Research Center. So you already have an existing facility which is not greenfield, and you convert it into whichever way you have to, and maximize it by virtue of using various entities and giving them access to all of that in the times to come. So while I say that IPR management still remains a little gray area in India, but there are plans afoot to cater for this. And R&D, while it is now, as I mentioned to you, is a function of money, a lot of, the kind of impetus which is now coming in insofar as, these funds are concerned, how the Department of Science and Technology is functioning, how the various ministries are now looking at it, interministerial dialogues, inter-industry dialogues, various other things are happening at the same time. So I think that this should not be a very major issue. While I don't say that it will be totally obliterated, because an IPR issue can't be obliterated anywhere in the world, because there is a price to it at the end of the day. So if I say that this is not an issue in A country or B country, and it is an issue here and it is an issue there, no, that I would be wrong in saying that. This is an issue everywhere. Only the quantum varies. So while this is being infused by a lot of things now by the government of India, as well as the industry, actually, I've been telling a lot of industry captains that we require a lot of industry push also into it, a lot of industry push. So you would have also noticed in the last around 1 year, there's a great research center which has been set up by Applied Materials. There's a great facility applied by set up by LAM. They have a great system called Semiverse, which is skilling people as an online platform. There are other people who are now investing into R&D facilities in India, including Indian entities. So while this quantum is there, but this quantum, as per me, as a very personal view, needs to be more, because government will, as it is put in, whatever it has to make this system function. But the industry also now has to pitch in and make it happen along with the government, hand in hand.
Thank you, Mr. Awasthi. Very nice talking to you. And I hope your optimism, bear some fruit and proves true. And we actually reach the figure of 500 billion by in next 6 years.
Oh, we will. We will. It's always the power of the saffron, white, and green. We will. Once we make up our mind, we'll do it. Thank you very much.